and welcome to the Watchman. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to Washington. The Israeli Prime Minister is scheduled to speak about the Iranian nuclear threat before a joint session of Congress in March, and the Obama administration is not very happy about it. Administration officials, always anonymous and unnamed, very brave, have threatened consequences against Netanyahu through the media, and President Obama will not meet with him during the trip. So what does all this mean for the U.S.-Israel relationship? We're fortunate to have experts from both countries with us today to make sense of it all. Yoram Ettinger is a former Israeli ambassador and an expert on U.S.-Israeli relations. You can check out his analysis at theettingerreport.com. We're also joined by Bill Koenig. Bill is a White House correspondent and leading Bible prophecy expert who is in Israel frequently. You can find his work at watch.org. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you back on the show. Always good to see you. Well, look, you're coming during, I would say, a perilous time in many ways for the U.S.-Israel relationship at the governmental level. The Obama administration has been very, in my view, very harsh towards the Israeli Prime Minister. Yoram, I'll start with you. Why is it so important? We know the Obama administration is not happy about this speech, but why is it so important? Why does Prime Minister Netanyahu feel that he needs to come to the U.S. and address Congress about this Iranian threat?
Well, the Iranian threat poses a very critical, clear and present danger to the U.S. in particular, as well as to Israel and the world at large. Israel is a player in the arena where Iran operates. Israel has unique access to different intelligence sources, which the Americans do not. But most importantly, there is right now a debate in the US and throughout the Western world on how to face up to the Iranian threat. A debate between the school of thought which says Iran is innocent until proven guilty, or the school of thought represented by Israel which says the track record is clear, they are guilty unless somehow miraculously proven innocent. And at that moment, there must be a decision made on the part of the US, which is the #1 obstacle to Iran. And the same impact that Netanyahu had years ago on the battle against international terrorism, he could have at this stage, setting the world on the right course rather than on the wrong left course facing the Iranian threat.
Yeah, and you know, this Iranian threat, as you mentioned, Yoram, is an existential threat not only for Israel, but for the region and for the United States, the great Satan, as the Iranians call us. We're going to talk about that more in the show. Bill, I have to ask you, what's the Obama administration thinking? You're a White House correspondent. You're on the ground. Your ear is to the ground here inside the Beltway. What's the Obama administration's thinking with Iran? You know, Iran's already broken basically 2 deadlines in these nuclear talks. Now we have a new deadline for June 30th, 2015. Does the Obama administration really think they can cut a deal with Iran?
Yes.
They do.
For the last 6 years, they think that they have what it takes. Barack Obama thinks he has what it takes. John Kerry also thinks he has what it takes. It's ridiculous. I mean, listen to what the Iranian leader says about the great Satan, the United States, and the little Satan, which is Israel. I mean, it's as if this guy, Khomeini or Rouhani or Ahmadinejad previously, as if these guys have never said these scathing things. I think it's so ridiculous, and it's egotistical, it's unrealistic, and at the same time, they are not extrapolating the danger of having a nuclear Iran. I can tell you right now, our allies, our so-called allies that border the Persian Gulf, are extremely concerned about a nuclear Iran that has developed short-range missile capability that's put every single one of those countries at risk in the near future.
The Saudis, the Jordanians, the Emirates, the Egyptians. Speaking about missiles, and we talk about the Iranian threat to the United States. Israeli media reports last week, Yoram, there were reports that Iran is developing intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Now, why would they want to develop ICBMs that could reach the United States conceivably? Why would Iran want to do that?
They are developing it jointly with North Korea, which sheds light on their attitude towards America. They are developing it while celebrating every year on November 4th, Death to America Day, which is the day that the terrorists in Tehran took over the American embassy, but that's supposedly a partner for peace, for negotiation. They are developing it while intensifying their strategic ties with the anti-American regime in Caracas in Venezuela, as well as Bolivia and Ecuador.
At our doorstep.
Pardon me? At your doorstep, intensifying their surge into Argentina, Latin America, which could have an impact also on Mexico, which means not far from your major metropolitan areas. And at the same time, they are spreading subversion and terrorism in every single pro-American Arab country in the Gulf and beyond. A few days ago, they caused a surge of the Shiite minority in Yemen to the helm in Yemen. Now, that was not a local issue. Yemen is a historical invasion route to Saudi Arabia. Yemen controls the very critical access of oil tankers from the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. Yemen borders Oman, which is an arena for subversion by the Iranians. Oman controls the only access which brings oil from the Persian Gulf to the world at large. The Iranians are pursuing a very clear anti-American tactic, and the reason is they consider the U.S. as the major obstacle on the road of attaining their major goal, namely the domination of the Gulf. No country in the world but the US can stop Iran from taking over the Gulf and then the Muslim world and then the rest of the area. Hence, targeting of the US as well as Israel, which means US and Israel are now facing a mutual threat, which further explains why the leader of Israel should come here to share with the American representatives of the American people the concern about that threat to their own safety.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Bill, what do you think the fallout will be? As I said in the intro, the Obama administration is not happy about this. I believe the Obama administration has been so harshly anti-Israel over the past few years, really stunning. I never in my lifetime thought I would see that kind of behavior out of an American president, but this is the situation we have. Will there be fallout in the relationship, not between the peoples? We know the American Congress supports Israel on both sides of the aisle. We know the American people, poll after poll, overwhelmingly supports Israel. So that's not the issue. But the Obama administration, that veto vote at the UN, etc., there's some nightmare scenarios there, unilaterally declaring a Palestinian state. Where does this head after Netanyahu makes, well, I'm sure he's a great speaker, I'm sure it's going to be a very successful speech. Where does the relationship with the Obama administration head after that? Well,
there's a lot of mixed signals right now. You hear over and over again that Obama says, I have Israel's back. He said that numerous times. John Kerry, the same thing. Even the State Department said the other day that Israel needs to be very careful about what they're doing right now because Israel needs to have John Kerry on the international stage standing for them. And I laughed. I said, give me a break. His whole peace process efforts in Israel have done nothing but endangered Israel. Every time he does something in the Middle East, it only makes the situation worse. And unfortunately, John Kerry has a very significant, a very big ego. And he has created a mess. And to preserve that ego, he tries harder, which only makes the situation worse. So there's two things right now that are happening in Obama's final 2 years. Number one, he wants to be the president that has helped finally establish the Palestinian state. Second thing, he wants to be the president that brings Iran into the fold of the international community and work out these differences where they'll become a responsible international player. It's like he's living in another world.
Yeah, it's a legacy issue for him, maybe? I mean, and he thinks Iran, is this his Nixon to China type situation? And I mean, I don't know that I'd be shocked if President Obama eventually tried to go to Iran and really did that in the next 2 years. But he is really hell-bent on doing that for his legacy, do you believe?
Yes, there's no doubt about it. And, you know, the whole situation in the Middle East is very confusing anyhow. I mean, just at the State Department the other day, top affiliated Muslim Brotherhood people were at the State Department having meetings.
That's right.
At the same time, we're talking about supporting al-Sisi. I mean, he was elected by the Egyptian people as their president. But then you have Muslim Brotherhood people at the State Department. What kind of signal or what kind of sign is that to the international community?
It's unbelievable.
And then in the Middle East, Eric, the other big issue is, who is Obama supporting? Is he supporting the Muslim Brotherhood? Is he supporting Iran? Or is he supporting a policy where no one takes him serious and the Middle East spins into a more difficult, dangerous period of time? And I would say the third.
Yeah.
This is his decisions in the Middle East, our enemies don't trust him. I mean, excuse me, our enemies don't fear him and our allies don't trust him. And it's creating a lot of chaos and confusion in the Middle East.
And a perilous time, obviously, in your backyard, Yoram. You're based in Israel, obviously. You look at Israel, and we're going to talk about this as we go on in the show, but it seems like Israel is encircled now really like never before. And I think the rise of ISIS is an interesting aspect to this because they're gaining ground in Syria, in Sinai, obviously. There's some murmurings that the Islamic State is trying to establish a foothold in Gaza and Judea and Samaria as well. As an Israeli, when you look out, how encircled do you feel Israel is?
You look at the Jewish people, the exiles, the destruction, the Holocaust, the boycotts, the expulsions. The current threat is dwarfed by all those which we have survived. But on top of that, in the last 10, 20 years, Israel has been enhanced as a strategic ally, as an outpost for the USA. The late General Alexander Haig, who was Supreme Commander of NATO and Secretary of State here, when he was asked how come he was such a flaming supporter of enhanced cooperation with Israel, he had a standard response. Israel constitutes the largest American aircraft carrier without a need for a single American boot on board, a carrier which cannot be sunk, deployed in most critical area for American interest, and if there wouldn't be a Jewish state in the eastern flank of the Mediterranean, then the US would have to deploy few more real aircraft carriers, tens of thousands of American soldiers. It would have cost the American taxpayers $15 billion annually, all of which is spared by one Jewish state.
Yoram, great points. We got to head to the break right now, but as Yoram said, Israel is the first line of defense for Western civilization. If Israel goes down, folks, we all go down, without a doubt. Much more coming up with Yoram Ettinger and Bill Koenig after the break. Stay tuned. And welcome back. We're talking to Ambassador Yoram Ettinger and Bill Koenig. We're talking about Iran and the Obama administration and what's going on with Israel right now. And gentlemen, it seems as you look out across the landscape of the Middle East right now, Iran has to be feeling pretty good about itself. The Obama administration is desperate to strike a deal with Iran over its nuclear program. Then you have an Iranian presence in 4 Arab capitals: Sana'a in Yemen, Beirut in Lebanon, Damascus in Syria, and Baghdad in Iraq. Yoram, has Iranian influence ever been stronger than it is right now?
Well, there's been a transformation of Iran from a country which in 2003 was ready to suspend its nuclear pursuit of nuclear capabilities when the American tanks appeared on the streets of Baghdad and annihilating the regime of Saddam. At that point, they assumed that they were facing an American Doberman. Since that time, however, American steps have convinced them that this is not a Doberman, this may be a poodle. And as a result, they have resumed in a much accelerated, intensified manner the pursuit of nuclear. And every single step of the current administration in Washington has reaffirmed in their mind that they can get away with international terrorism, with hate education, with subversion, and with nuclear capabilities, trusting that the U.S. does not want confrontation, but prefers diplomatic negotiation. And the tragedy is that when you assess when you examine the very well documented track record of Iran, from the daily abuse of human rights through anti and hate America type of mentality, all the way to development of weaponry of mass destruction, you wonder whether such a regime can be perceived as a credible negotiator. And in my mind, the assumption that an agreement with Iran holds water on one hand, and the assessment of Iran's track record on the other hand, constitutes an oxymoron.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to say that Iran can be any kind of an honest broker in nuclear negotiations is madness. Bill, look, we have about 2 years left with President Obama. The Middle East is in flames right now. We have Iran marching towards a nuclear weapon, still developing intercontinental ballistic missiles that can one day reach the U.S. How much damage can be done in the next 2 years?
Well,
we've seen a lot the last 6 years.
Absolutely.
2 years to go.
Yeah, when you think about it, in reality, the United States and NATO are on this side of Iran to make sure that ISIS doesn't take over the Middle East or develops their Islamic State caliphate.
Right.
So in other words, the United States is working not directly with Iran, but they're on the same page, attempting to keep Assad in place in Syria, that keeps Iran in Syria, that keeps Hezbollah in Syria. I was talking to a friend of mine with a Middle Eastern news organization the other day. She's their Washington correspondent. She's from Iraq originally. And she said she just got back from there. She was talking to one of the top military leaders of Iraq. Her family, many years ago before Saddam, she had 2 generals in her family. And she was inquiring about their military. And he says, our military is run by Soleimani, the Iranian.
Yeah, Bill, we got to leave it right there. The Iranians are running things in Iraq in many ways. Coming up more with Bill Koenig and Yoram Ettinger. Stick around. And welcome back. We're wrapping up with Yoram Ettinger and Bill Koenig. Yoram, we've had recently a lot of activity in northern Israel between Israel and Hezbollah. What is Hezbollah and Iran's game in the Golan region, in the Galilee, along Israel's northern border, around towns like Metula? What are Hezbollah's plans in the possibly near future?
Well, Hezbollah plans are secondary. It's Iran's plans. Iran is leveraging Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, in order to further destabilize the region, in order to destabilize pro-American Arab regimes. Hamas is employed to destabilize General Sisi in Egypt and in Sinai. Hamas is also promoting destabilization in Jordan, which advances Iranians' aspiration to create the Iranian stretch from the Gulf all the way to the Middle East. However, I suggest not to despair. Obama is following more or less the policies of Jimmy Carter, who stabbed the Shah of Iran in the back, elevated Khomeini to the helm in Tehran. Obama proceeds with that policy, but after Jimmy Carter, the U.S. bounced back under Reagan. U.S. will bounce back. Israel has already bounced back. There's no room for despair. And just like the people of Israel, from the oblivion, slavery in Egypt, they bounce back to the promised land. So we are going to do in the contemporary times.
That's some great words of encouragement. Bill, what do you see looking in your crystal ball in the near future? We have this Netanyahu speech coming up, obviously in D.C. What do you see coming in the relationship?
In the 20 years that I've covered Israel and the Middle East actively, I've never seen a period of more chaos. This whole region is in a period of chaos. You've written a book on ISIS. You know, that's another dynamic that many people hadn't even considered. Along with the Iranian threats. You have opposing Shiite Sunni caliphates that are trying to gain control of the Middle East. At the same time, great concern about Israel's northern border. Israel's more than has the substance and definitely the ability to take care of the Hezbollah, Iran, Syria threat. The big concern for us that are supporters of Israel and the United States is the fact that the United States will not tie Israel's hands behind their back to keep Israel from doing what they have to do for their national security.
Yeah, great point. Yoram Ettinger, the EttingerReport.com, Bill Koenig, Watch.org. Check out their work, folks. Expert analysis, some of the best in the world, the best you're going to get on the U.S.-Israel relationship. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Eric.
Coming up, would you like to go to Israel with the Watchman? I'm heading to Israel in November 2015. Find out how you can join me. More details after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I am thrilled to announce that along with my CBN News colleague Chris Mitchell, I'll be helping to lead the Dateline Jerusalem tour of Israel from November 3rd to the 13th, 2015. And I want you to join us. Now, Chris has been based in Jerusalem for 15 years as CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief. During that time, he has covered all of the major events in the Middle East, and he's also been my trusted guide on many trips to Israel. So it's going to be a blast to team up with Chris to lead our tour together later this year. Now, if you've never been to Israel, let me tell you, it is a life-changing experience. There is nothing like walking throughout the Holy Land in the footsteps of Jesus and the prophets and seeing the Bible come to life before your very eyes. Not only will our tour take you to all of the important biblical sites, Chris and I will also give you a unique perspective on the security challenges facing Israel and what it all means for us here in America and for the future. Bible prophecy. The tour is being run by Inspiration Cruises and Tours, the top Christian travel management company in the business. So this is all going to be first class. Count on it. You can find all the information on how to sign up for the trip by going to the webpage that you see right there on your screen. There's also a video at that link where Chris will tell you much more about this epic experience. Folks, my first trip to Israel changed my life. You may have heard me talk about it here on the show. Once you go, you are never the same. So join us from November 3rd to the 13th, 2015, 10 days in the land of Israel, the Holy Land. I would love to break bread with you later this year in Jerusalem for such a time as this. So from the Watchman, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace.